Good afternoon, everyone, and a huge welcome to this final session of today. I'm Jenny Norman. I'm one of the senior lecturers here at the Open University, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be chairing this session, particularly as its focus is on an incentive called WeCops, which was probably set up a good few years ago now, but it provides a virtual space on Twitter for regular, focused and professional discussions on policing matters. WeCops involves a great deal of hard work and creativity from a really small team of people who work behind the scenes. And I'm really pleased to welcome two of the members of WeCops as our speakers today. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Emma Williams, who is one of our own. She is the Director of Research and Policing Partnerships at CPRL. She's just given a wave there. And we also have Caroline Hay, who is an inspector from City of London Police. Both Emma and Caroline are founder members of WeCops. They've got loads of observations that they've made over time, and they've been integral. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, both Emma and Caroline have been an integral part of developing WeCops to the success that it is now. So I'm really, really thrilled to introduce you today. Just before I hand over, we've got 20 minutes with Emma and Caroline, and then some time for some questions and discussions at the end. So if you've got any questions throughout their presentations, please do pop them in the chat bar and we'll come to it at the end. So I think, Caroline, am I handing over to you first? Yes, so over to you, Caroline, and look forward to it.
Thank you, Jenny. It's lovely to talk here today. Thank you for having me. I always love discussing WeCops because I think it's such a great platform, and it's really actually sits well in this conference about resilience, because police and social media hasn't always gone hand in hand. It's a very troubled and difficult relationship, I think, between social media and policing, which I totally understand. There's an awful lot that rides on social media. I don't think you can have an outburst about anything, any sort of moral panic about anything without it hitting social media these days. So policing has to be very careful about what they do with social media, and that was actually part of why we introduced and we really wanted to have somewhere for these sort of professional discussions, and to be able to get that sort of information that we can gain from social media and put it onto a platform so that we could store a lot of the ideas that were coming through. I'll start off by looking at this presentation here just to discuss exactly what WeCops is, just in case you haven't joined a chat before. It's a bi-weekly debate on a Wednesday evening at 9 o'clock. We last for 1 hour till 10, which is quite late for some, and we will select different topics, and actually we get people ask us to run chats, or we just discuss as a small team what our chats are going to be, and then we often ask an NPCC lead to host the chat, or someone just with some sort of expertise in the area. Emma, next slide please. The idea is to develop these policing debates using social media, which means that we get the practitioner's voice, the frontline officer, but it also means that we get officers and staff involved, PCSOs, everyone from the police family, but more so we get people from nursing, people from our partners, in business, or from the local authorities, from teaching. It's such a vast array of people that can get involved in Twitter chats, and we always make sure that we say to people, anyone can join in, just use the hashtag WeCops, and then you're just running on the chat really. Next one, Emma. So this presentation will be broken down into two parts. The first part will just explore the background of WeCops, and the second we'll just use two small case studies to show how WeCops has been influencing policing and some police policy and some academic research, and Emma will finish off explaining the academic research because she's much better than that than me. Next slide. So WeCops was driven initially by Chief Superintendent Kevin Purcell, and this is what I sort of meant at the beginning when I talked about resilience. We had a small working group to discuss how we were going to use social media and policing together. And I think there were 6 of us on the original team. 2 of the team decided that it wasn't for them and that they saw too many risks involved with WeCops as an idea. So, this is where innovation and resilience really clash, because at that point you've got nothing to fall back on. This hadn't happened before. We'd seen it happen in nursing. We have We Nurses, and that was really popular, but they don't really hold the same risk and the legitimacy issues that we have in policing. So when 2 people pulled out and said it wasn't for them, they didn't think it was a great idea, it was a very testing time. And I actually spoke to Kevin Purcell this morning and I said, why, when we were all sort of worried, you decided that actually we'd push on. And how did you have that resilience? And he said, well, it came down to experience, and it came down to having a really strong network around me who supported me and supported my decisions. And we did have a good team around there at that time, such as Assistant Commissioner Helen King from the Met, Dee Collins. They were really great supporters of WeCops, and so that really helped us drive the concept forward. So we only have one academic on our team, Emma, which we are so grateful to have her on board. She gives us a slightly different viewpoint, and also brings together some of our research, some of our ideas into research. She has completed a paper on WeCops before, and also helps us with our blogging as we go. When we first started, the MPCC lead for social media was Ian Hopkins, and he was a little bit nervous around the concept as well. But once we'd sort of ran our first couple of chats, we sort of won him over, and he actually ended up running a chat himself on social media and the police. So that all really helped in the early days with our legitimacy and with with getting people on board, really. Next one, please, Emma. So this was a first for us, the Frontline Review. So WeCops launched in 2015. I think the Frontline Review came about in 2019 with Policing Minister Nick Hurd. I was approached by the Home Office about them running a few chats through WeCops for the Frontline Review. They'd never communicated with policing like this, or the public on social media. So it was a difficult time. We decided to add a link into the chat in case there was any confidential information that people wanted to share with the Home Office. But they really wanted to look at a lot of different things in policing, such as well-being, professional development, leadership and innovation. And they really thought that having people contribute to WeCops chats on a Wednesday afternoon would really help with their research and reaching out to people on the front line. So on the next slide, you'll see Nick Hurd there. He said that they'd used WeCops. It was really popular. They managed to harvest a lot of ideas, and that from this they were then going to start working out the solutions. And I think actually they did deliver quite a lot through that Frontline Review. And I know that Oscar Kilo was strengthened through that. So we're really proud of that chat. The next chat that I'd like to sort of highlight, again, it comes down to the resilience piece, is around the pandemic. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the pandemic through the conference so far, but it was a really strange time for WeCops because no one could think about anything else. So we did run a chat during the pandemic. It was a really lovely chat actually, but it didn't get any traction because it was about recruitment. Tom Gaymore ran it, and it was it was all set up to be a wonderful chat, but we couldn't get people's minds away from the pandemic. And then we had Mike Cunningham and Andy Rhodes host the WeCops building the WeCops pandemic session, and we had 121 contributors and a reach of over 3 million people. It really struck a chord. It gave people a chance to talk about different ideas that they were utilising nationally, because everyone was facing different challenges. But it was also really cathartic to speak to colleagues and speak to members of the public and just to say, look, we're here, we're trying to do our best. It's a really, really tough time for everyone. And actually, that's probably one of my favourite chats to date, really. It gave us all a real renewed drive forward. And it was a good chat. And on the next slide, you'll see by everyone using the hashtag you get put into our platform on www.wecops.org, and we do a pre-read at the beginning, and then in the middle it will show everyone who's contributed, and you'll recognise some familiar faces there. We'll get a chat cloud at the end, which we also host, that we also post, and then we'll put the chat debrief at the bottom of that on the website as well. So yeah, that was a very well attended chat. So yeah, WeCops grows from strength to strength and continues to influence national policy. For example, Mr. Harrington, Chief Constable of Essex, he ran a chat on public order and policing, and then he fed that into his national group. And yeah, it's just a really great way of getting frontline officers and officers throughout policing and staff to chat things through. So yeah, as I say here, we're not finished yet in terms of policing and social media and the difficulties that we face. You'll be aware of the recent research that has suggested that individuals' accounts aren't that helpful. I have an opinion on that I won't share today, but it's something that we moving forward, we're obviously going to have to do a little bit of work on. But yeah, I think that we really help to build people's resilience in policing, because we offer that voice and that space to discuss issues. And as I say on the bottom there, we ask for forgiveness and not for permission. I'll hand you on to Emma, who will discuss the academic side of things.
Thank you, Caroline. Thanks very much. Caroline, can you just put your thumb up to make sure that I haven't got any echo, because my microphone can be, yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much, Caroline, for introducing the concept of WeCops. I think it's a fabulous forum for many reasons, and I think one of the main kind of reasons that Kevin and others were involved in it in the first place was to enable officers to share practice about various different topics around policing, and it was a really good way of getting ground level practitioners engaged in quite high level conversations, and I think that's one of the reasons why it was introduced. But what became quite clear quite early on from sort of myself and also a good friend of mine, another academic, Dr. Ian Hesketh, noticed that there was quite a lot of conversation going on within social media about police officers disclosing stress through Twitter and various other forums. And actually, we started to ask questions about, how much information could we get from a forum like WeCops that could actually start to unpick some of the kind of complex issues that were going on around policing at the time. And I mean, I'm sure you'll remember in sort of 2015-16, there was an awful lot of conversation about the closure of police stations, a lack of canteen area for officers to debrief and reflect on their day. And we found that there was a lot of anecdotal evidence suggesting that officers were moving this conversation anonymously onto Twitter. So in 2016, myself and Ian decided to hold a WeCops chat to see if we could kind of use WeCops, or what officers thought about us as academics using WeCops chats to explore evidence really about what practitioners were feeling at the time. How could we use the evidence? What did they think about us using the evidence? And what barriers are there to using social media as a form of knowledge creation? So we ran the chat, and it was very busy, and there were some themes that kind of came out from the chat which we looked at afterwards. One of them was really clearly about this concern about anonymity, especially if officers were disclosing quite personal issues around well-being, and there had been some cases over time of officers being investigated around misconduct for using social media, and there was a lot of concern about that. There was also a recognised need that they needed to be discreet about tactics and local information, but there was a real theme there that the officers who engaged that evening felt that social media is a really good way of putting people in touch, starting conversations about quite difficult things, and also allowing police leaders to be more transparent, which they really have been actually over some of the WeCops conversations we've had. But surrounding these issues were some concerns from the officers that engaged about this sense of disempowerment in the current climate, being left out of conversations, left out of decision making around change. There was a lot going on at the time, and remains to be going on, about change, and there was a sense from the chat that it wasn't really involving the practitioner, and they felt in a way that WeCops gave them that availability of input, if you like, into a lot of quite high level conversations. So myself and Ian concluded from that chat that Twitter is actually a really useful tool to add resilience to research and programmes of change, as it offers an inclusivity of officer voice, both within the academic environment for further probing, but also within the policing world as well, for leaders, if you like, to listen to the reality of the change in terms of how it affects their own officers. So looking at some of the kind of academic literature that's available on knowledge creation, and I'm sure many of you have seen this research and literature before, but sometimes the kind of purest form of evidence-based policing, if you like, can be seen as ignoring some of the officer voices, and that there's a need for some, you know, a broader range, if you like, of methodologies actually capture meaning from the practitioners themselves, and that kind of social reality of action and understanding of some of the change and the policing world from the perspective of the practitioner. And actually, you know, this is about recognizing that there are various interpretations of what is perceived as truth that comes from evidence. And actually, Ian and I felt that it's a very quick way of probing a very willing group of police officers who want to talk about their reality. And we really did conclude from all of our kind of review and analysis, and, you know, sorry about the plug, but there is an academic paper available on this if you'd like to have a look at it. But we did conclude that social media can help with some of this, you know, lack of voice from the practitioner. So, you know, interestingly, in other industries, it seems to have been much more accepted that social media platforms can not just facilitate, you know, sharing of good practice and recognition of innovation and creativity that might be going on that doesn't get captured all the time, and also this increased trust, if you like, between workers and their senior leadership team. And we really felt that, you know, social media can offer a forum where officers can feed back, but on various issues. They can feed back on their practice. Their experience of the pandemic was a really good example of that. Their experiences of working from home, flexibility, capturing good ideas about that. Their experiences of reform and change, you know, how was it affecting them, and also for academics, and it has been used for this purpose, is a way of asking practitioners what they think about research outputs. As a practitioner, how useful is this for you? Again, we really believe that the communication methods, you know, if you like, within the context of policing, for leaders and academics and practitioners, perhaps this is in need of more consideration, and we can potentially explore the use of Twitter a bit more in terms of gaining knowledge from the practitioner and the ground floor. So just to conclude then, and really interested in thoughts on this, we you know, there is a methodology used in other areas called ethnography, this kind of idea of a virtual ethnographic journey in different industries that we believe could be really, really useful in ways for policing. Understanding some of the input from officers can start really good investigative conversations. It raises new issues. I know many academic colleagues who have followed WeCops to get ideas for research, and also for making contacts for people to speak to for their research. It captures information that many classic methodologies at the moment miss, and real insights are provided from the use of WeCops and other Twitter groups to gather that experience of the practitioner and it really involve them in some of these areas. And just finally, and a really good example of an actual kind of practical product, if you like, are some of the policing blogs that come out around some really important issues. And you know, I know many academics who have used these for various different purposes, because they really do, you know, provide a critical reflection from a practitioner perspective, which so regularly I think goes missing in some of the research today. So most of you know I'm a huge fan of Twitter, but we believe that WeCops can offer quite a lot to a wide audience, both in the academic community and also the policing world. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma, and thanks, Caroline, for a really interesting conversation around WeCops and the benefits of using evidence as a form of knowledge. But I've got a question, but I think I may save that till the end because we've got a few questions in the chat. So the first one is from Russell Hinton. Thank you, Russell, for your question. He says, as a law enforcement officer and a part-time PhD student supported through CPRL, if he wanted to seek the public's views as part of his research, could he use WeCops? If so, how could he do this? What are your thoughts on that?
Caroline, do you want me to go first? I mean, I think we're often looking for new chats. Actually, we ask people to come forward with ideas for chats, and that might well be a way that you could engage in that sort of community, Russ, if that's something that would appeal to you. We often put out calls on WeCops after bi-weekly debates, asking people to come forward, because sometimes you know, it's quite difficult to keep thinking of topical ideas. So I'd personally be very happy to help you set up a chat if that would be of interest, and obviously if it's agreed with the wider team. But I think that's what we really want, you know, this forum to be used for. So if you would like to do that, I'm sure Caroline and I could facilitate a conversation depending on what the subject matter is.
Yeah, we're booked up till September now. It's absolutely exploded in the last year, so it's been really great. But what we can always do is slip in a chat because we are every other week, so we can slip in one for every week if it's a desperate plea. But yeah, we'd be happy to look at any chats. And just go onto the WeCops web page or the WeCops Twitter page and just DM us there, and we can reply.
Super, thanks both. We've got another question from James Humphrey. Emma, if it's beneficial for the private sector employees to spread good working practice amongst peers, why does the police research imply that the opposite case for individual accounts?
Sorry, just to clarify, are you talking about the recent discussion around not allowing officers to have anonymous accounts?
Yeah, Emma. Yeah, that's what I'm asking. I didn't ask
Okay.
Caroline because you'll have to sit on the fence.
No, okay. I won't sit on the fence because I think it's a really bad idea. I really do, and I think you'll get a lot of we'll miss an awful lot, I think, from that decision. And not only that, James, I know you know I feel like this anyway, but I do believe truly that outlet can offer more than just sharing information for people. Actually, officers have started to use it as a way of debriefing after a pretty poor dreadful day, and I don't think I don't think I've ever seen anything really that's particularly inappropriate or would mean that somebody be picked up for their use of social media. And I know the majority of people I've spoken to about this don't think it is the right decision. Caroline, I don't know if you want to say anything on that.
Well, what I would say is I've never sat on the fence in my life, so but I will be careful around what I say, because I do respect the decisions that are made. But for me, the value particularly is in accounts of difference. So especially frontline officers, PCs who have got accounts, and their picture is on their account and they talk from their account. What it really brings in is people that can then speak to that person from maybe a particular community. I'm thinking of a few accounts, from black officers, from gay officers, where people see those officers out and about on the streets, and they DM them, they contact them, and they say, oh, I didn't think I would like to be a police officer, but I see what you're doing and I'd love to join now. So that side of it for me is really, really key. And sometimes I think when we want to suit everyone, we really do miss out on the marginalized voice. So that's something that really concerns me.
Thank you. We've got another question from Dave Bamber. Emma, do you think that this approach of individualised worker voice benefits or detracts from the collective voice?
Hi Dave, how are you? Hope you're well. Nice to hear you. No, I think what me and Ian are saying here is that obviously you when you're doing these chats, what we tend to do when we analyse the information afterwards is, certainly for myself, and I know Jenny's been involved in them, Caroline's written lots of things up, we would always kind of make a thematic overview of what we find, rather than pick up sort of individual issues. However, in saying that, when we write the blogs, we do tend to theme up the information as we would if it was a piece of research. And I'm not suggesting in any way it's a robust piece of data gathering exercise that we would use for a proper research project. But in saying that, I have come across individual practices that are being done in a neighbourhood team, for example, that are absolutely vital in terms of picking them up as potentially good practice. So in that respect, I do think picking up the kind of individual experience, innovations, creative pieces of work, but in terms of themes of discussions, we would do that much more as an analysis of the overall chat at the end of the evening. Caroline, anything to add?
No, I'd agree with that. I've got so much from the WeCops stuff that I could use in my own force, especially around good practice in maternity, returning to work, things like that. So it's been really valuable.
Can I just quickly ask a question from myself, if that's not too selfish, but it kind of is in line with this, because you've been going now for quite a number of years now, and obviously it's a really successful forum every other week, and you produce the blogs at the end of every discussion. Have you thought, or have you done this so far, where you go back and almost use those blogs as secondary data and see if there's any themes across them where they can be grouped together? Is that something that you might think of doing or have been doing previously?
No, but it's a good question, because a lot of the chats we've now had over time are linked together. So we might have we've done a couple on the same subject to look at it over time, because it still remains of great interest. The one I'm thinking of at the moment is, so Katie Barrow-Grint was meant to be here today, and she's run quite a few recently on what she called ridiculously women-y conversations, which is a strange way of terming it, but lots of themes across the conversations we've had around gender inclusivity, maternity, firearms. There are some core themes that come out across those chats around gender, as an example, that some of which completely confirms academic literature and academic knowledge that we already know, but actually it's it picks up much more nuanced kind of contemporary issues that perhaps we haven't yet thought about in the academic community. So no, I mean, and I think that is something that all of us as a group would just love to have more time to be able to do some of this stuff. But as you know, it's voluntary, and it's just something that Caroline particularly puts an awful lot of time into. So, but no, the scope for doing that is 100% there.
Yeah. And like you say, everything feels quite interlinked on occasion, which is really, it's just quite interesting, isn't it, when you've got nuggets of information kind of everywhere. OK, I'll move on to Kerry Aldritt's question. So she came across WeCops quite randomly by seeing someone else's tweet. How can we move forward to make it more accessible for all officers? Haven't seen it published within the force. It's such a shame, and they're looking forward to tomorrow night's discussion. Plug away there. But yes, accessibility. How can that be maximised?
Yeah, Kerry is running a chat for us tomorrow, which is lovely. So yeah, do join in at 9 o'clock. Yeah, this is something that really troubles me. Some forces really support it, and some don't. We have had a bid in to get a little bit of money to get some merchandising out there, so we can, you know, everyone loves our WeCops mugs, and we'd love to sort of do a little bit more around that. But it does come back to the whole thing about us being voluntary, and you know, we do what we can where we can. So what we do want to look for is sort of advocates within each force. So we have our own WeCops advocates, like we've got James there at TVP, and now Kerry up in Manchester. So yeah, certainly if we could pass on any more plugging from you guys, that would be awesome. Emma, I don't know if you have any more thoughts on that.
No, I mean, we did have conversations, Kerry, at the beginning about engaging more with the College of Policing, and Mike Cunningham was very supportive of WeCops from the minute he got into post at the college, and we wanted to build CPD elements into WeCops as well in a more official way, which is what they've done with We Nurses, which is the, you know, health service equivalent. There's all sorts of we people, there's we doctors and we everything, but unfortunately that didn't happen, but at the same time, actually, we were also slightly concerned about aligning ourselves with the college, because we wanted to remain separate to that for various reasons. So I do think it's something that we need to think about, though, because the opportunities that are produced through WeCops are, well, we think fabulous for officers, because it's actually led by them themselves. So yeah, any ideas you've got around you know, lifting the WeCop banner, please do let us know.
Yeah, we have got a chat coming up with our new college leads. So yeah, there might be some more watch this space moment, I suppose.
I'm just conscious of time. I'm just going to try and squeeze in a couple more questions. There is one that's come through around why Twitter, why not another platform? Is there a rationale there?
It's the accessibility. Yeah. I love the fact that you can literally just pick up your phone. You can lie in bed. I do most of my tweeting in bed, or you know, anywhere, cooking tea. You can just log on, do it. You don't have to be attached to a work computer, and everyone can get involved. It's great to have members of the public seeing policing as, you know, people who care passionately and people who've got ideas. And you know, I just think it reflects really well on policing in that public space.
Right. Yeah, and also it allows us to capture all of the information under the hashtags as well really easily. So, you know, you go on to sort of hashtag the WeCops hashtag anyway, you know, everything is there, and it just collates it really well through the WeCops, through the platform we use as well. So it's just the easiest, most accessible platform really.
Thanks, Laura, for that question. Also from Michael Hope. Hi, Michael. He's asked if there's any data to indicate the sort of percentage of serving officers and staff that are actually actively engaging and contribute to WeCops. I saw some stats there. Have you got?
Yeah, well, we've got we obviously have a list of all the people who have engaged with each chat. We get that through the platform as well. I mean, obviously, when it's an anonymous account, we don't know, you know, whether it's fairly obvious who is a police officer and who isn't, but we unfortunately don't know things like their rank, often their place of work and their core role, but that's sometimes alluded to in their own commentary. But we do get quite a lot of detail about who has contributed to the chats, and also how many kind of things they've said. You know, and we do have a kind of core set of humans that come every week, you know, but actually recently we've been getting quite a lot of new faces and accounts coming on board, I think, because the subjects have been incredibly topical. But it's difficult with the anonymity issue.
Okay, I think I'm going to have to draw the questions to a close. I'm afraid there are still a few more on the chat bar, so I don't know if you get a moment at the end to perhaps respond to them. But that's been an absolutely fascinating session. It's great to hear the practitioners' voices at the centre of WeCops, and it's just such a collaborative effort. And you know, that's really quite wonderful in this day and age. So yeah, I just wanted to thank both of our lovely speakers, Emma Williams and Caroline Hay. Thank you for this afternoon.